75-year-old Monica has suffered years of abuse from her daughter Emily, until a chance phone call leads her son Mike to a shocking discovery. After learning that his mother has been forced to clean the house like a maid while Emily kept it from him, Mike makes a decision that will change their family forever. The confrontation between brother and sister spirals out of control, but justice is inevitable. Emily's fate is decided in the courtroom, and Monica gets a chance and new life. Stay tuned to find out how this incredible story ends. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Mom, it's still a bit dirty. You need to keep scrubbing the floor. Monica's youngest daughter, Emily, smiled wearily. I want everything to be spotless when my guests arrive. Monica stood up straight and turned to face her daughter. Dear, I'm almost done, she said. At that very moment, Emily's phone rang. It was her older brother, Mike. She frowned as she picked up, even though she wanted to ignore him since she didn't want to hear his voice so early in the morning. Emily took a small step back, not wanting her mom to realize Mike was calling. What are you looking for? She whispered quietly. Monica ignored the interruption and continued cleaning from the opposite side of the house. I want to speak with Mom. Is she awake? Mike asked. No, she hasn't woken up yet, Emily replied, regulating her breathing to hide her agitation. I'm just making tea to take to her room, she added. Okay, keep her from waking up. I'll call you later, Mike said wearily. I want to talk to her because I really miss her. Knowing her brother would call back later that day, Emily grimaced. An interruption from their mother's favorite child was the last thing she wanted on this particular day. Without saying goodbye, she ended the call and returned to the living room. She tried to keep her composure, determined not to let the conversation affect her plans as she walked. Emily was resolved not to let Mike spoil her day or the work she had done to prepare everything. Meanwhile, Mike faced an overwhelming amount of paperwork at his office that demanded his attention. His schedule was packed with crucial appointments, yet the phone kept ringing. Every minute of his day seemed carefully planned, and he had meetings with important clients. Despite the workload and the obvious stress, a persistent anxiety lingered. He had to call his mom again. No matter how hectic his day was, he always reminded himself to call later when he glanced at the clock. Mike was trying to focus on a contract when his secretary, Lucy, knocked softly on the door. Mr. Mike, your first client is in the waiting room. Ready to see you, she said calmly but firmly. Glancing up from the pile of papers, Mike nodded to Lucy, straightened his tie, and got up to meet his client. Send him in, he said calmly, preparing to greet the customer. Mike quickly tidied his desk, neatly stacking the papers in one corner. He straightened the small stack of business cards he always carried and carefully tucked away stray pins in the drawer. He wanted everything to be flawless when the client walked in, as a show of professionalism and respect. As the door opened and the guest entered, Mike took a deep breath and forced a polite smile. The client hesitated at Mike's desk, an elderly man with deep wrinkles and eyes weighed down by unpleasant memories. Good morning, Mr. Mike, he said in a worried, shaky voice. My name is Frank Thompson. Mike shook his hand firmly. Greetings, Mr. Thompson. Please, have a seat, he said, gesturing to a chair. Thank you, Mr. Mike. I need your help. My life savings are gone. Frank continued, tears welling in his eyes. Someone took advantage of me because I'm an older man. I've lost everything I saved for retirement. Mike listened intently, his commitment and empathy evident on his face. That's truly unfortunate, Mr. Thompson. Nobody should have to endure such an injustice. I promise I'll do everything in my power to recover your money, he said firmly. Placing a reassuring hand on the elderly man's shoulder, Mike declared, I will not allow this fraud to go unpunished. Determined to protect his client's rights, Mike decided to take the necessary steps to rectify the injustice and pursue justice for Frank Thompson. Over the course of the more than hour-long meeting, the attorney asked all the questions needed to fully understand Mr. Thompson's case. He took careful notes about the problem, paying great attention to every detail and demonstrating true empathy. Frank explained how he had been duped, providing details about the con artist and the methods used. At the end of their discussion, Mike asked him to gather all the documents and records that would help resolve the case. Mike bid farewell to Mr. Thompson with a small smile, promising to do everything in his power to help him regain what had been taken from him. Mr. Thompson departed feeling more relaxed and optimistic, knowing he was in capable hands and could achieve justice with Mike's help. Mike spent the rest of the morning juggling interviews and complex situations that demanded his full attention. Every client that day presented fresh challenges, requiring him to apply all his legal knowledge and expertise. After a demanding round of meetings, Mike decided it was time to unplug for a while. He called his sister, intending to speak with his mother. But after several unsuccessful attempts with no answer, he decided to return to the office, assuming his sister was busy. He promised himself to try again later. Meanwhile, Emily noticed the phone ringing nonstop at their mother's house. What a pest, she thought to herself, feeling a mix of annoyance and disdain. She knew Mike was trying to be the devoted son, always emphasizing communication. Still, she chose not to answer because she was preoccupied with her own work. When the phone finally stopped ringing, Emily used the moment to vent her frustration on her mother. "Mom, you haven't washed the dishes yet," she complained angrily after spending the entire morning cleaning. "You must hurry. Many of the garments still need to be ironed." With a groan, Monica went to the kitchen to comply with her daughter's demands, even though her hands still hurt from cleaning the floor. She knew arguing would only lead to conflict, so while Emily continued doing her nails, Monica quietly continued with the housework. Emily treated her mother more like an unsatisfied boss treating a worker than a daughter treating her mother. Feeling tormented, Monica couldn't understand why she was being treated this way. She had always been a kind and committed mother who invested time and energy into raising her children to the best of her ability. But now she was dealing with her daughter's irritation and contempt. She wondered when their relationship had lost the respect and tenderness that once defined it, and the emotional pain was just as heavy a burden as the physical. Emily informed her mother of her evening plans, feeling dissatisfied that she had been given additional responsibilities. "You're not allowed to leave your room tonight, Mom," she said. "I don't want my new boyfriend to see you when he comes around. You can only come out when I call you. Do you understand?" All Monica could say, with tears welling in her eyes from her daughter's cruel remarks, was, "Whatever you say, sweetie." After a few hours, night eventually arrived. To welcome her partner home, Emily prepared carefully, wearing a beautiful outfit, putting on perfume, and applying makeup sparingly. She welcomed Alex and invited him to settle in. He praised her efforts with a gleam in his eyes after noticing how clean, shiny, and well-organized the house was. "I love keeping the house in order," Emily said. "I hope this night will be the start of something even more wonderful between us, so I want you to feel at ease." The pleasant evening was interrupted by a slight sound coming from the kitchen. Curious, Alex glanced over and noticed Monica working on something, moving a little awkwardly. "Is that your mother, Emily?" Alex asked. "Please introduce me," he added, smiling amiably. Emily felt intense pain and anger when she realized her mother had ignored her request to stay in her room. But in front of her partner, she feigned composure. "Mommy? No, not at all," she forced a smile and said. "She's our maid." Monica, who had heard the conversation perfectly, looked down with deep sorrow. Her mind was flooded with memories of the past and a profound sense of isolation. She started to breathe more heavily, as if each heartbeat was painful. Fighting back tears and trying not to draw further attention, she remained silent and continued preparing dinner. Her soul plunged into a sea of sadness, making every movement in the kitchen mechanical. The awkward mood became palpable, but Alex, confused by the response, didn't ask any more questions. Monica relived in her mind the moment she had suffered a minor fall at home, recalling how this cruel and humiliating scenario had begun. From the start, it was clear that Mike was deeply concerned about his mother's health. To care for her, he arranged for his sister Emily to move in with her. At the time, Emily neither studied nor worked. Without hesitation, Mike took responsibility for all the household expenses. He never imagined his mother would be treated this way. For Monica, every taunt and every denigration became a recurring nightmare. Emily felt as though knives were piercing her heart from the contempt in her eyes. She experienced an intense melancholy that smothered her spirit and eroded her joy of life, leaving her soul to wither under the weight of disgrace. Monica longed desperately to hear her son Mike's comforting voice at that moment. She knew, however, that Emily had always been opposed to her having a cell phone. This refusal made her feel even more helpless and confined, leaving her reliant on her daughter's phone. She was aware that she couldn't ask Emily for it. The thought of facing her contempt was suffocating. Deep down, she knew Emily would have outright refused her even if she'd had the courage to ask. Her already fragile mood was further exacerbated by this desperation, a mixture of helplessness and despair that made her feel like a prisoner in her own home. A void seemed to swallow every flicker of hope as memories of better days began to fade. But there would be consequences, for God watched everything. Mike had 4 extremely special clients waiting for his guidance when he arrived early at the office the next morning. In keeping with his dedication to those seeking justice, Mike was determined to assist them despite each having rather distinct issues. However, a flood of memories overwhelmed him while he was making coffee at home. He thought back to his early school days when his mother would prepare his breakfast. He remembered how she would cut the toast exactly the way he preferred. He smiled during those loving and committed moments. Moved by these comforting recollections, he promised himself to call his sister again to check on his mother. His desire to care for and protect his mother clashed with his professional obligations, leaving him conflicted. After several hours of uninterrupted work, Mike told his secretary that he would be stepping out for lunch, but would return shortly. He walked to the corner eatery, a quaint cafe renowned for its home-cooked meals and welcoming atmosphere. Upon arrival, he greeted the server and ordered the day's special, a hearty meat stew with potatoes. As he ate quickly, the memories kept returning. He reflected on his mother and how Emily might be experiencing feelings similar to his own. He decided to call his sister, taking advantage of the break from the office's bustle. With his heart thumping a little faster than usual, he dialed Emily's number. Each ringing tone heightened his unease. After what felt like an eternity, Emily finally answered, her tone startled and somewhat distant. "Hi, Mike. What do you need?" "I'm busy," she said. "You cease. How are you? How's Mom doing? Could you please pass the phone her?" he asked, slightly uneasy. "No, she can't speak right now. She's okay, but she's sleeping." "What's worrying you?" Emily replied, attempting to deter him from calling again in the coming days. "I just miss Mom," Mike said, bewildered by his sister's attitude. "That's all." "Don't worry," Emily responded, sounding a little irritated as she tried to reassure him further. "I'm taking good care of her." But her reaction only amplified his anxiety. Feeling helpless at not being able to be near his mother and ensure her well-being, Mike chose not to push the issue further, trusting that Emily was handling everything. With a sigh, he hung up and tried to focus on finishing his lunch. He had no idea that his sister's motives were less than sincere. Though Emily appeared composed and confident on the surface, the truth at home was very different. In reality, she resented the burden she had taken on and felt overwhelmed by it. However, an unforeseen turn of events was bound to expose the situation, making this painful reality impossible to hide for long. While driving home from work that afternoon, Mike couldn't stop thinking about his mother. His anxiety deepened, and with every passing moment, his nostalgia grew. "I must visit my mother. I must give her a hug," he repeated to himself. He remembered her soothing words and warm embraces. "I'm at my breaking point," he decided. "I must see her now." Glancing at the clock, he realized his workday was over. "What could be more important than hugging my beloved mother at this moment?" he firmly told himself. Mike hurried to his car, thrilled by the surprise visit. "She'll be thrilled with this," he thought. After all, mothers deserved all the love and attention they could get. Anticipation and eagerness for their reunion made his heart race. Mike couldn't erase his mother's smile from his mind as he drove to her house. He got the car started, and as he drove, his thoughts wandered from his early years to how wonderful it would be for his mother. Despite his strong desire to arrive quickly, he suddenly decided to make a particular stop. When he was younger, he remembered visiting a bakery near his mother's house. He turned at the next corner and headed straight there without hesitation. The perfect cake will be chocolate. He smiled and thought, it's her favorite. The scent of freshly baked cakes filled the air when he arrived, delicious and familiar. With immense joy, he selected the most exquisite dessert he could find and purchased it. He knew this gesture would make their reunion much more memorable and bring immense pleasure to his mother. His heart grew even more excited and hopeful as he resumed his journey, securing the cake in the back seat. The distance between them seemed to stretch with every red light and roadblock. The day's weariness began to fade with the anticipation of their meeting, and he told himself excitedly, just a little longer. Eventually, he arrived at his childhood neighborhood. He parked the car in front of his mother's house and pulled up to the front gate. He clapped his hands and called out, "Mom, it's me." Expecting her warm smile, he waited, but there was no response. Mike frowned and made a louder plea. "It's me, Mike, Mom." His only answer was silence. A knot formed in his throat as anxiety began to rise. Where could she be? He tried to remain calm while scanning the house for signs of activity, but it appeared deserted. He cleared his throat and called out again, "Emily, can you hear me, Mom?" His thoughts started to grow darker with each passing second. The joyful anticipation quickly gave way to a startling sense of unease. He began to feel afraid. What if something happened? His heart pounded faster as fear crept into his mind. As darker thoughts clouded his mind, his initial excitement shifted to a growing sense of dread. Then he suddenly remembered that he had an extra set of house keys in his car. Without hesitation, he grabbed them and unlocked the door. He rushed inside, dark suspicions racing through his mind about what might await him. The unsettling silence that enveloped the house only fueled his concern. But what he saw in the living room was far worse than anything he had imagined. There, in front of him, was his mother, kneeling on the floor with a small brush, scrubbing like a maid. His sister, Emily, stood nearby, watching indifferently like a spectator. Mike dropped the cake in shock and outrage. "Mom, why are you on your knees scrubbing the floor?" he yelled, his voice breaking. His mother looked up. Her face bore the marks of years of exhaustion, and her eyes were red. Emily barely flinched at her brother's anger. Mike's rage was so intense that it was almost unbearable. Each passing second added to the unbearable tension in the room. "How can this be happening?" Mike shouted as he hurried to help his mother stand, holding her gently. "We were never treated like servants by you. You've always been a strong, self-reliant woman." "What are you doing, Mom?" "My dear, I have no choice," his mother muttered through her tears, her head bowed in shame. "I'm too old to argue with Emily about her refusal to work." Mike's heart ached as he heard her words. He embraced her tightly, trying to console her. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of everything, I promise." With anger in his voice, he turned to face his sister. "What are you doing, Emily? How can you treat our mother this way?" But she didn't even look up from her freshly painted nails and remained unfazed. She stayed silent, knowing it would be hard to deny what Mike had witnessed. In desperation, Mike turned back to his mother and begged her to explain the truth. "Why do you put up with this treatment?" Tears welled in her eyes as she summoned what little courage she had left. "Emily makes me do all the housework, son. When she has her boyfriends over, she introduces me as the maid and locks me in my room." Mike was consumed by both rage and deep sorrow at seeing his mother's vulnerability. "Mom, how long has this been happening? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" His mother closed her eyes, trying to compose herself, and muttered, "I didn't want to worry you, son. I didn't want to cause you any trouble." "Mom, you will never be a burden to me," he whispered, pulling her into a firm hug. "I will always be here to defend you because you are my mother." He inhaled deeply, trying to control his rage and give his mother more confidence. "This is over now, Mom," he said resolutely. "You don't have to worry about anything anymore. I'll make sure this woman gets the justice she deserves," he continued. "Everything is going to change from now on. I won't let you suffer any longer." His words brought his mother great relief, even though she was still crying. Pleased to know she was no longer alone, she hugged him tightly. "Now I understand why you wanted to live with Mom. Mike replied firmly, his eyes burning with rage as he walked up to Emily. It was to take advantage of her and have me pay for all your bills and desires, not to take care of her. You're despicable. How could anyone in their right mind harm their own mother like this? Hurt by her brother's words, Emily decided to stand up for herself. You have it easy, Mike. You can do whatever you want with your life because you work hard and succeed. But I have to live with an elderly woman. You don't know how hard it is for me. She spoke with a tone of coldness and indifference, as if she had no connection to the elderly woman. All I'm doing is surviving. You will never do this again, Mike growled, moving closer to Emily, his eyes piercing hers. I won't cover any of your expenses from now on. How could you be so ungrateful? Mom took us to school every day, showed us her endless love, and took care of us when we were sick. You lack gratitude. I don't want to see you near Mom ever again. Emily raised her hand to Mike, attempting to confront him, but he firmly seized it in midair. What do you think you're doing? He asked sternly. I'll take you to court. You don't realize I'm an attorney. Emily didn't calm down. Instead, she became even angrier and more threatening. Do you think my contacts are missing? You'll see. Mike looked her in the eye and calmly replied, showing no emotion. God is my witness, and he sees everything, so I'm at peace. You will see, Emily, justice will prevail. Emily seemed to grow even angrier after hearing his words. She responded contemptuously, trembling with rage. Mike, your religious preaching doesn't scare me. This isn't over. Prepare yourself. Mike turned and added, unfazed. Since I know the truth always wins, I am not afraid. Mom will have the tranquility she deserves. Enraged, Emily watched Mike leave, knowing the confrontation had just begun, but also that her brother was more determined than ever. I'm going to pack some of your clothes, Mike replied resolutely, taking his mother by the arm. Right now, you're coming to live with us. Do you agree? She agreed without hesitation, her eyes welling with tears. Feeling her son's love and protection during these difficult times filled her heart with relief. Mike began gathering his mother's clothing as she stood in the doorway, appreciating and lamenting the house she had worked so hard to create, but that Emily had turned into a prison for her. Although she didn't know what lay ahead, she was confident she would be well cared for by her son. Mike looked at Emily one last time, his eyes a mixture of sadness and firmness. You are a stranger to me from today, he declared resolutely, his voice chilling Emily's blood. I'll pursue justice. I will put you in jail without mercy for what you've done, which cannot be forgiven. He shut the front door behind him. Despite his harsh words, Mike allowed Emily to remain in their mother's home, refusing to cover her expenses but secretly acknowledging the family ties that bound them together. He knew that, despite the harm Emily had caused, she was still his sister and their mother's daughter. Mike's face showed a mixture of grief and determination as he left, holding his mother and helping her walk. He was ready to defend his mother and seek justice for all the pain she had endured. Sarah, his wife, gave him a warm welcome when they arrived at the house. With a dazzling smile, Mike's young wife said, Monica, dear, what a joy to have you here. Come in. This is your home now. Sarah was so genuinely happy that she quickly grabbed Monica's bag of clothes and escorted her to the guest room. Monica praised her son for saving her, crying softly. I couldn't endure that torture for another day, she admitted with a shaky voice. I'm grateful you took me out of there. Mike kissed her on the cheek and gave her a gentle squeeze on the hand. Everything will be fine, Mom, he said. You're safe with us now, Monica added, still crying. I'm concerned about Emily's new boyfriend. He appears to be a kind man, but she will undoubtedly cause him pain. Mike replied, We'll see if he stays free, with a gleam of resolve in his eyes. I'll ensure Emily receives what she deserves. She will not cause suffering to anyone else. Feeling that she was finally beginning a new chapter of her life with people who genuinely loved her, Monica gave him a grateful look and exhaled a final sigh of relief. It had been 3 weeks since Monica had been rescued from her own house. How is the case against my sister progressing? Was the first question Mike asked his secretary when he arrived at his office that morning. The summons has been received, and she will be judged shortly, she responded. I am relieved. She must be held accountable for the suffering she caused my mother. Who will make the decision? The secretary said. It will be Judge Nora Castillo, without raising her eyes from her papers. When Mike heard the judge's name, he grinned. I'm a very good friend of hers, he replied in a relieved tone. Together, we have resolved numerous cases, and I am confident in her integrity and fairness. Knowing that she will bring justice for my mother is comforting. Mike turned and went into his office with a sigh of relief, sensing that Monica's justice was coming. The eagerly anticipated day finally arrived. Mike did everything in his power to present his case with unmatched care, highlighting Monica's familial ties to Emily as a contributing factor to her vicious behavior. Renowned for her fairness and diligence, Judge Nora Castillo listened patiently to all arguments from both sides. After a short break for deliberation, Judge Castillo returned to the courtroom prepared to deliver her verdict. Her voice was firm and unwavering as she declared her decision. In addition to a 5-year prison sentence, Emily was also ordered to pay Monica $200,000 in restitution for the significant harm she caused. A collective sigh of satisfaction broke the ensuing silence as justice was ultimately served in this tragic case. Knowing that he had won justice for his mother, which he had so desperately sought, gave Mike a sense of calm and happiness. Emily experienced a range of emotions when she heard Judge Castillo's decision. She felt the weight of the sentence descend upon her, and tears began to fall down her cheeks. However, she accepted the verdict with newfound dignity. She had had time to reflect deeply on her actions and the damage they had caused during the weeks she had been separated from her mother. Emily asked to speak to Monica for a moment before leaving the courtroom. She walked slowly, her expression sorrowful, as she approached her mother, who greeted her with a calm yet sad look. Emily began, her voice filled with emotion. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but I don't know how I could have hurt you so badly. I believe my sentence is appropriate, and I hope that this time I'll be able to correct my mistake." With the affection and compassion that had always defined her, Monica held her daughter's face in her hands, kissed her forehead, and said, "Thank you, dear. The fact that you recognize your error means a lot to me. This period will aid in reflection. Be careful." In a moment of profound forgiveness and bonding, tears streamed down both their faces. The courtroom, which had remained silent throughout this brief exchange, witnessed the transformative power of forgiveness and repentance. The hope that this challenging chapter could ultimately lead them to a path of healing and understanding was as evident as the pain they both felt. The family home, which now only evoked memories of a painful and excruciating past, was sold by Monica after the trial. She felt it was essential to let go of those walls infused with unpleasant memories in order to close that chapter and start a new life. Monica was warmly welcomed at her son's home the day she returned following the trial. Given how arduous the entire process had been for her, her daughter-in-law had prepared a special surprise. Monica noticed small touches that conveyed the love and care they had prepared for her as soon as she walked through the door. A bouquet of fresh flowers and a card that read, "Welcome home, Grandma," were placed on the dining table, and the air was filled with the aroma of her favorite meal. "You're loved by us." As Monica embraced her family, a mixture of relief and gratitude filled her emotions. When Monica found out she would soon be a grandmother, she was shocked. It was the perfect time to share this blessing, but Mike and Sarah had waited until the situation with Emily was resolved. This news brought Monica such joy that it helped her overcome the pain of the past few years. All of the difficulties and suffering vanished abruptly, like clouds after a storm, and she felt reborn with the hope of a new life on the horizon. At last, Monica realized that life is full of ups and downs, and that there is always a chance to find light, even in the darkest of circumstances. The challenges she had faced had made her stronger and better prepared for this new phase of her life, filled with love and the anticipation of a new family member. Monica gazed toward the future with gratitude, ready to welcome every new experience with a heart full of peace and happiness. Have you ever stopped to consider what you would do if you were in Mike's position?